I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Sarah. And this is Public Comment North Smithfield, news by the neighbors for the neighbors. We are local moms and small business owners just digging through the issues so you don't have to. We bring you facts and honest narratives in a format that fits your busy morning schedule. And today we've got a special guest with us.
We have Anne. Anne, how are you?
I'm great.
Yes. How are you doing with the horrible weather?
It's better than the hot weather. We do have a scheduled work harvest party at the community garden this afternoon that we had to delay till tomorrow. But when you run a garden, that's just what you live with.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's true.
We've been having to water a lot. So maybe we'll have to catch up a little bit.
I know you're also involved in a fiber arts club. Just tell us a little bit about you and what you like to do and your involvement around town.
Well, I think like a lot of people who have lived in town, I raised my kids here, and I didn't really get involved in anything town-oriented until later in life. I find that people who have kids, they're so busy, you don't really have the time to devote to too much besides your kids' activities. So I've always been involved in gardening, and I got to the Parks and Rec Commission and wanted to start a community garden. And since being involved with the Parks and Rec Commission, I've run seed starting classes. I've gotten instructors then from Rhode Island Resource Recovery or the Master Gardener Program to run workshops. So it's been an interest of just gardening, but I also like cooking and doing artwork. And I was hoping that if we ever got a multi-generational center going, that working with other volunteers to run classes with cooking, doing art, printing, that we could keep a lot of vibrant activities going, but we needed to have a space to do that.
Yeah.
So it's been my disappointment that we're not having a multi-generational center built.
Is that one of the reasons why you wanted to run?
It's not just that one reason, because there are so many other things that I think needs to be addressed. It's just one component of a kind of lack I see in the town of not being tied into what the public wants, not hearing what the public wants, not reaching out to get public input. So I think some of our failures that we've had is based on not doing that basic community building groundwork.
Sure.
So this is a trajectory I've been on, and sometimes I think, well, maybe I should just step back. I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing. I would continue to do it, but I really think tackling some of these basic issues will really help our town function better.
Yeah, absolutely. So what, like, I know you mentioned like there being a lot of stuff, feeling like current town council is not necessarily aligned with what the public. Obviously, I think the multi-generational center is one. Like that seems to have been something that's been pretty popular. Are there what is your sort of like top three things?
Narrowly down to three. I'd say my first really goal is to open up the information and the flow of information to the town. To build that sense of committee, that information flow, that understanding. I was struck that I've seen people post on Facebook, what about the fireworks that should be going off the town? And I'm like, well, why can't these people just check the town website? Because it's not on the town website.
It's not.
So we're spending, I think, over $15,000 to run a fireworks show. And we're not giving any information out on our town website about it.
I had no idea we spent $15,000 on the fireworks show. That's a lot of money to not be, like, I'd be screaming that from the rooftops.
And, you know, it had originally started, I think, with a price tag of around $10,000 that was paid for by donations that John Beauregard had gotten. But over time, those donations have dwindled out. And of course, the price has gone up.
Sure.
And so the town is now paying for it. But the problem I see is that we will spend money, but we won't put any effort into informing people, publicizing it. I just find their website to be lacking a lot of information that people should be going to first. And we don't do that. We don't do a good job of promoting all the wonderful things that we do and that we have. Is just not there on the website.
Yeah, we don't have like a community calendar. Like I've lived in other towns where there's a community calendar where you could see like, it was like a lot of times it was sort of integrated with the library. So you could see like when the book clubs are happening, when a fiber arts club, garden club met, right? Like, if you wanted to get involved, like you could kind of see everything, not just the stuff that you had to sort of notify because of open meetings laws, but like just the general things that were going on around town.
Exactly. We actually have a lot of resources in our town, a lot of vibrant things that go on. There's all the work the Heritage Association does. There's, Lilley, softball, scouting.
Right.
Tons of things that people do. And you would not even know they exist going to our town website.
Sure.
So where do you think some of this follow through kind of needs to happen?
Yes, I do. And I think, there's other ways I think the town council could build methods of communication. I find a lot of people will complain about things like speeding. Okay. The town council does not enforce speeding. It's not part of the town council job to ticket people who speed. That would be under the police chief, and the police chief reports to
Town administrator, I believe.
town administrator.
I was like, pop quiz.
It is. Yes. Bueller.
Yeah.
Okay. But the town council could set up a special town council meeting that's pretty much an open forum to discuss speeding and other police issues. The town administrator would be there. The police chief would be there. And they would have the opportunity to hear from the people what the problems they perceive. And from there, maybe we can work out the police chief coming up with a strategy to deal with speeding in different types of roads, different neighborhoods, and then build one of that to address concerns. But just coming to the town council is not necessarily going to create a solution.
Sure.
And there's
So
a lot
it
of
sounds-
other type for things.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
So like you're saying, it sounds like there's a few different things that need to come together, but how do we address the perception that people in the town typically have that this is town council's responsibility or their natural instinct is to go to town council with these issues?
I think that would take a period of time. It would take education. And I certainly don't think that people should be told they can't come to the town council. The town council is really the only open forum available in town for you to come and, talk about what your problems are. But it's also on the town council to explain, this is how we can solve the problem. This is the agency you should be speaking to. This is the town administrator's jurisdiction. But it's useful to have that information get to the town council whether it's being emailed, being spoken in public comment section during the open meetings. I don't want to shut down any communication coming from people, but I also don't want them to think that by coming to the town council, it's an automatic solution.
Sure. There's a lot of work that has to happen right? That's just the entry point into, right? And Sarah and I, like, one of the reasons we started this podcast is because we want people, specifically people kind of, we saw a lot of communication, like you said, on Facebook or, you're getting information from like comment sections of a private Facebook group or having to go back 10 years on a newspaper article for some of these things. And, moms, like you said, people with kids who are wrapped up in activities don't have time for that. But we do believe, like, really strongly that government is driven by people and, helping people to understand, like, okay, town council is the entry point. And then you have to stick with it, right? You have to continue to kind of hold those people accountable, especially when we have this kind of it's not complicated, it's not uncommon, but it's a little bit trickier when you have a town administrator who's independently elected. Mm-hmm. Right. And a town council that's independently elected. And so it's not like the town council, not that I think, I want to be clear, I'm not calling for Scott to be fired, but like, if you happen to have a bad town administrator, the solution is to elect a new one in 4 years, right? Like, it's not like the town council, I don't believe there's any mechanism by which the town council can say, hey, like, you're not doing a good job, we got to get you out of here. Like, really the only solution is to wait to elect a new one. So there has to be a lot of coordination between the two these two government structures.
There does need to be coordination, and there does need to be cooperation. But I also think that the town council has not always taken an active role in directing the town administrator to outlaying their goals about their expectations. It doesn't have to be strong arming. It doesn't have to be rude. But in the absence of a town council not running their agenda, without having their vision, without having their plan, the town administrator, by default, will run with his ideas.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't think the town council has done a great job with outlining visions, plans, timetables, agendas. It's just kind of rolling along with the status quo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's absolutely true. And anyone who's been part of a group project sees that, right? That if no one steps up, then the power is going to go to the one person who says, hey, this is what we're doing. And they by default become the decision maker. And everyone else's ideas are kind of going to take a backseat.
And what is democracy if not one big group project? And as we all know,
for
from
better
the group
or worse,
projects we did in college,
mm-hmm.
It's true.
Yeah.
And I know people will say, I don't like politics. And I can understand that because it can be difficult. Anytime you're working with a group of people trying to get a decision, it can be difficult. I mean, just think about your family going out to dinner and deciding where you're going to eat.
One question that I think has been tough for North Smithfield is that we have things that we want, for example, more traffic enforcement, a multigenerational center, more investments in water and sewer infrastructure. And all of those things cost money. And everybody is very nervous, understandably, about affordability and taxes going up. And so how do you see the balance between recognizing the importance of community investments while also holding space for people who are concerned about North Smithfield becoming more unaffordable?
Well, when we talk about unaffordable, I think the only thing we have control over is our taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we can't control the cost of food. We only slightly might be able to control the cost of housing.
Sure.
When we do build outs of infrastructure like water and sewer, we have to recognize that not only does it cost us money to build it out, but that we're now on the hook forever to keep and maintain that. There's different groups nationally that have looked at the return on investment on those types of things. And the general outcome that I've seen is that smaller incremental development in areas where you already have infrastructure can give you the growth that you need without costing a lot of additional infrastructure costs. So do we maintain our sewer and water for places like Slatersville, Forestdale, Union Village? Or do we run a line out to a development that's a half-acre lot where we have maybe 10 or 12 houses? It's going to cost us as much to maintain that as we would on 12 houses in Union Village.
Sure. So I think, so if I'm hearing you, I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. Like if we start, so Union Village already has water. If we sort of start, okay, we're going to push out slowly from here. Eventually, you could theoretically get to the whole town if you wanted to. But rather than saying like, okay, we're going to start on the other end of town and build a pipe, we're going to start from where we already have infrastructure and then just kind of start moving it.
Actually, no.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so on my piece of property here in Forestdale, I have a big house. And behind my house, I have a barn. I could, if I won the lottery, I could put a 3-bedroom house in that barn. Would we have to extend the sewer line? No. I would have to extend a line from the barn to the sewer, but it's not going to increase anything for the town. Now, in addition, I have enough property that if zoning allowed it, I could build an ADU. And on this ADU, because I have a steep hillside, it could look like a carriage shed. I would make historically fit in, but it could be a small 2-bedroom apartment. And again, all I would be doing is running an additional sewer and water line to one that already exists. And we've already put 2 new units into Forestdale, which would be virtually invisible. It would fit in. It would look like it's been there for 250 years. Well, 200. And there's a lot of places where that could happen, where your build out is within the confines of a place we already have. Now, we have pressure from the state to put in additional housing. And unfortunately, the state takes a very one-size-fits-all, you are going to push housing in. They give tax incentives and development money to big developers who are looking to put 20, 30, 60 unit things in, apartments, condos. Does that really fit into North Smithfield?
Right.
Unfortunately, the state is not proactive enough to provide financing to small individual homeowners to build out a property like mine.
Even though that would be probably the most efficient, right, for the community that we have.
It would be made the best fit for us. It might not be efficient in the terms of, okay, I just knocked 60 units off my list. And it would depend, it would also depend on the individual household. There's some people who may have room for you who are not interested in having it and, someone else living on their property.
Well, and this is why, so we can't, there's certain things that people have asked us to cover that we can't cover because my husband is on the planning board. And it would, I worry about, oh, your wife said such and such on a, some of these places are very litigious, right? It's like, oh, your wife said such and such on a podcast. And like, was she influencing your vote, or were you telling her things that you shouldn't tell her, whatever. So we try to stay away from anything that's like actively in front of the planning board. But one of the things I've noticed kind of through his eyes and through sometimes when I really want to see like the life leave his eyes, I'll watch the recordings of the planning board because they're listening to lawyers kind of get like very specific, oh, and this subset of this legal code we're allowed to do blah blah blah, and I could just like see him slowly wither, and that's fun for me. But it's always interesting. It's like when we think about efficiency, it's not just about how quickly can we put up a unit. It's okay, so now the unit is here. That's more roads to maintain, influx potentially of children into the school system. We have to be thoughtful about how we're going to manage that water, sewer infrastructure. It's not, I think sometimes people, there's the sort of a debate right now, right, on like, how do we solve housing? And I think there's some people who are like, just put up as much housing as you possibly can, as quickly as you can, without really thinking about everything that has to surround housing to actually create a stable community.
Yes, I think that's true. And when I see this incremental development pattern, I see a lot of it is owned by people who live here, that people who actually live on site. So if you own a piece of property with 1 or 2 rental units, it's owner occupied and you care. And it's important than just be managed by a rental company who doesn't care. Possibly.
Yeah.
So there's trade-offs that maybe we don't have 60 instantaneous units, but we have a stronger fabric, a stronger community fabric. And I think there's a fear that people will say, oh, I don't want our historic communities eroding or being overbuilt. But when you look at, say, at Wickford, historic, dense, gorgeous, expensive, just because it's dense doesn't make it bad. We might make it more efficient for our town infrastructure.
And I also think just because a community is rural or semi-rural, I don't think it necessarily needs to be doesn't necessarily need to be under-resourced, right? And I think that's where some people, I think, when we have this idea of development versus kind of maintaining rural character, it's like rural communities have businesses and main streets and, right? Like, I think it's more a question of like, what kind of development do we want and how does it fit with the people who are already here?
And I think I'm guessing a lot of people's fear is that our rural areas will just totally disappear, that it will become just one housing development after another.
Right.
Now, my dad grew up on a farm in Maryville, Indiana. It was all farm country. His dad, my grandpa, actually used horses. And on their off time, the farmers, my granddad, would rent their horses and their carts, and they would work for the steel mills in Gary, Indiana. So they would haul stuff around. But shortly after World War II, my grandfather started selling plots of land off. And Maryville, Indiana is now a dense suburb of Gary, Indiana. My grandfather made a lot of money, but in no way, shape, or form would you drive through Maryville and say that's farm country. It is just full of housing. It's full of malls and shopping. And in fact, the last piece of property my grandfather sold next door to his house was to McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see that happen. But there's going to be pressures constantly to make that happen. And how do we acknowledge that pressure? It's going to be there. And how do we steer it? How do we control it if we can? How do we manage it? How do we preserve what's important to the people here who live here? And I'm not saying not in my backyard in the sense I don't want families coming here. I don't want to say I don't want certain kinds of people coming here. I think our town should be a place where anyone can come here. And it should have housing available for all economic levels, but without paying over the whole place.
Right. That's really fair. And I'm curious, what do you see the role of North Smithfield? And you don't have to answer this because this isn't on your. I'm going to throw you a fastball. It just sort of came to my mind, and so we can always you can give me a no comment, but I'm curious, like, what do you think the role is of like a public public land trust, right? Like, we have some properties in town that I think have been sold that people now retroactively are really frustrated by what's going to happen to the land, but like the land's already been sold, right? And we can't necessarily stop. If something fits within our zoning ordinances, we can't stop somebody from doing what they want with the land that they bought. So what is the role of maybe North Smithfield saying, hey, this is a really beautiful piece of wetlands. We're actually going to buy it and hold it for public, for the public.
I think that might be one of the arrows in our quiver. It might be one of the tools that we could use. It would have to be thought out. I think a lot of times we have this broad idea that we want green space, we want land, but because we don't have a comprehensive plan, a cohesive plan, we seem to do a really bad job. If you go back far enough, you can look at the price that we could have paid for the gold property, and we blow it. And we yes. Now, currently, we do have access to part of the gold property. And as far as I know, the town itself has done nothing, as far as I can tell, to put up signage, to advertise that it's available, to do any maintenance on the property. It's as if it doesn't exist. Okay. We have 33 acres at Halliwell that's been sitting there empty, I think 5 years now.
Yeah. Well, empty except for you and your beautiful garden, right, which I see.
Right. But no maintenance.
Yeah.
Last fall, the DPW came in and brush hogged the property, but that's been the only thing that.
Yeah.
So currently there's a playground there. It's surrounded by briars. It's almost impossible for a kid to get to because we don't want to, I guess, maintain it. So why would we invest in more property that we just ignore?
No, that's a really good point.
I mean, it sounds like there needs to be some kind of underlying system for this, right? Like a change in expectation or something that's under the purview of town council, like a change in ordinances or close coordination with the town administrator so that this piece is changed, right? Because if we want to preserve as much of the vibe, so to speak, of North Smithfield as possible, right? That also means preserving the fact that we have these beautiful wide open spaces, and if nothing is done proactively to protect them, then we're kind of going to find ourselves in this position again, right? Where there's no protection over this land. And so then therefore decisions could be made about it that happen by private investors, right? Or real estate developers or things like that. And we just kind of look on it as and go, oh, but what if we did this 5 years ago, right? Or change something. But, I think you still make a fantastic point of that if you're struggling to take care of what you already have, it's ultimately responsible to take on more. So then where's the middle line? And, I think maybe that's a question for everyone to think of as they think of what they want to vote for, and how they want to engage in town politics and stuff, right? Like we have to be able to make these decisions.
We do, and I think it's the town as a whole responsibility. It's not just the town council, but we need a strong conservation commission. We need a group of people who are going to be watchdogs, who are going to speak up for the environment, who are going to advocate for the use of these green spaces. And our Conservation Commission doesn't really exist. We need, I'm on the Groundwater Protection Commission, and that's a firecracker group. They're great to work with. We get stuff done. It's a new commission.
All women too, right?
Yes.
So that's why. Women always are the one. Yeah.
Well, we need that same fire and spirit on other commissions and committees and boards. We need participation from the public because in the end, it's the public that's going to hold us accountable. If the public is turning a blind eye, if they're disinterested, if they weigh in only every couple of years.
Well, and so for full circle moment, imagine if somebody wanted to start maybe an environmental protection club, and then they could post it on the community calendar that's on the website, and then they could meet at the multi-generational building.
Right.
Yeah.
And all, right. All of these kind of issues sort of come back to the same, right? It sounds like kind of transparency, accountability, having community infrastructure that enables connection building, almost kind of being as this sort of foundation, right, of a community.
Yes. So, currently, Scott Gibbs has mentioned that he wants to spend the $1 million grant money for Halliwell on passive recreation. And as we discussed at the Parks and Rec meeting yesterday, we don't know what he means by passive recreation. And he's not looking for any public input that I can see on what passive recreation.
Like what the community would actually want for passive recreation,
Right.
right? Like what would we find helpful?
Right. So there's many variations of what passive recreation could be. But until I think he engages or the town council engages in what that looks like, I'm afraid there could be $1 million spent building what might be Scott Gibbs' idea of what passive recreation is.
Right.
And I think that would be an unfortunate path to travel down because it's not going to be based on what people want.
So there's a really
really quick, I'm just going to say, at the risk of becoming very unpopular very quickly by Scott, if you have strong opinions, if you're listening to this and you have strong opinions about what you want for passive recreation, call Scott. Let him know.
Sorry, Scott.
Give him a shout. No, I'm not sorry, Scott. That's
He'll pick the hearing. This should be part of his job is listening to what people want.
Blow up Scott's
Oh,
phone.
his voicemail's gonna blow up.
But you know what? That's one of the
Gonna
tools of
happen.
democracy. This is something that, like,
No, it really is.
yeah, as someone who's been involved in politics at various levels and in various ways since I was like 18, one of the biggest tools that the people of a democracy have is to be really annoying and irritate their elected official to the point where they just give you what you want and you'll just go away. You know, that's one of the ways that you can do that is like kind of blowing up a phone line or bogging down a public comment period to the point where the town council is like, we just want to go home. You know, so we see this a lot of times on the national level, like people will call and crash the phone lines at the House or the Senate and on the federal level, right? And so I am a huge proponent. If you don't want your constituents to annoy you, then you probably shouldn't run for public office because that's just kind of come to the
That's true. That's true.
So sorry, Scott, but you know, if you want specific things, you should annoy Scott and blow up his phone.
But I think the Parks and Rec Commission has decided to ask Scott to attend our next meeting to actually discuss this. And I think the Parks and Rec Commission would be interested in acting as that conduit of public input so that people can come to our commission and, you know, describe what they're looking for. But in the 5 to 6 years I've been on on the Parks and Rec Commission, we have never been asked for our opinion. And the ordinances that made up this commission was said that we were to advise the town administrator and the town council. And none of those have taken us up on that capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is pretty interesting, and you started to make this point, Anne, was that things need to match what people want, right? And what makes sense. And so there's actually a term for this in like the engineering field. It's called person-centered technology. And so when you have something that is person-centered, it's focused on the practicalities of how are people actually going to use this, right? And so this can avoid common pitfalls like having that handicap accessible door at the top of a set of 3 stairs, right? Where a wheelchair user can absolutely not go up those stairs to then use this handicap accessible door, right? That is the opposite of person-centered tech. And so what you're talking about is person-centered design. We need to actually think, and that also means take information in from people who are actually going to be using this space and who it's actually designed for. So that means talking with kids, talking with teachers and parents, talking with anyone else who's going to use it. So like, for example, scouts obviously are using Scouters Hall a whole bunch. It's used for traffic court and things like that. So we need to be talking to the scouting packs and troops in town. We need to be talking to whoever is running the municipal traffic court and all of this to see like, hey, what does this space need to do? And obviously we can't make everyone happy. Otherwise we would have like 20 different buildings for 20 different uses if we were to do that. But at the same time, there's going to be some pretty significant overlap or ways to make the spaces be flexible, right? So like moving doors and walls so that they can kind of open up and close if we need larger spaces and smaller spaces, things like that, so that this actually is functional for a majority of our needs, and recognize that there's going to be some fringe edge cases where this is maybe not going to fit, and what can we do so that those people still get their needs met too, because like you said, we want everyone to be welcomed in town. And what does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we have the opportunity, because in 2029, we are due to rewrite our comprehensive plan.
Mhm.
In order for us to do that, we need as much public input as possible. So one of my goals would be to get those committee commissions and boards up, running, engaged with the public, so that when we go into the phase of public input for the comprehensive plan, they're going to be ready to weigh in. It will probably take almost a year of public input,
Mhm.
whether we set up different workshops, public hearings, maybe a final charrette or a beginning charrette. But we should spend the time to think about exactly what we would like to see North Smithfield become. What do we preserve? What do we
Okay.
fight for? What we want? Because that's going to be our template for the next 10 years. And as we know from the planning board, they base a lot of their decisions on what the comprehensive plan says. We are going to be a weak ground putting zoning ordinances in if it's not reflected in the comprehensive plan. This is going to be our foundation. And it shouldn't be done quickly. It shouldn't be just filled in the blanks. We need everybody to be involved
Mhm.
because we are determining what we will be for the next 10 years. So we need to do our groundwork here and now so that we're ready.
I have so many people that care, right? I think that's one of the things too for North Smithfield. Like, you know, there are a lot of communities where, you know, people run for town council and it's just whoever put their name on the ballot and that because they're running unopposed. And then even then, sometimes you're not filling the full town council and you got to like strong arm somebody into taking that last spot. And, you know, one of the things that I really love and admire about North Smithfield is that we do, I think, proportionally have so many citizens who are so engaged and committed, you know, even if we don't always necessarily agree on the path forward. You know, people do, I think people do show up here more than other communities always do.
Well, maybe it's part of our rural character. I do think when you go into small towns, you find people willing to step up and fill the gaps that, you know, sometimes a big city would pay people to do. And we have huge numbers of volunteers. You know, when you look at the Heritage Association, when you look at scouting, at all the youth athletic groups, they are all run on volunteers. The community garden is all volunteers. People do step up and take care of each other. And I appreciate that. And I know that working with the town and getting involved in politics seems like a hard reach. But it should have a process to make it as easy for people to put their input in, to be engaged, to find out what's going on, to know what the structure is, and why it works the way it works. And then they can engage as they wish, when they can, recognize that it may not be something they do all the time, but that their voice is important and we want to hear it.
Yeah. Sarah, what are your, I know you have other questions you want to ask.
So I've been asking this of everyone so far. I'm going to ask you too. What is one question that no one ever asks you that you wish they would?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Did you listen to our other episodes?
Yes. And I'm going to actually throw that back in your face.
Mm.
Okay. I'm going to read you a quote. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. So my ask is, what does everybody want to do for North Smithfield?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a good one, right? Like, what can people give to the town?
And I think, again, like trying to keep a pulse, on the closest thing I think we have to like a town square is Facebook right now. I would love to see that expand. But if you're keeping a pulse, I think what people want is community more than anything, right? They want pathways in which they can meet their neighbors. And I actually think people, I mean, as you said, like we have so much going on. We have so many people filling that void. It's just how do we bring them all together in a way that is more streamlined and accessible?
Yeah, I think we don't serve our community well because we don't have a North Smithfield Town Facebook page. We haven't embraced social platforms. We have not a very good website, so you can't get information easily.
What if we got Scott on TikTok? How do we feel about that? Just floating that as an idea.
I don't know. I'm not on TikTok.
I would love to see you try.
At this point, we've missed, right? Like we don't even have a Facebook page, but we're like 3 social media platforms past Facebook now. So we're gonna have to get Scott on Blue Sky and TikTok.
Well, perhaps one of the things we need to look at is
Let's
a
do
social
it.
media manager, or have that part of someone's job.
There's no bad ideas in a brainstorm,
But just being able to go on our website, find out what's going on, what is, can I go on and find hiking sites? Where can I hike in North Smithfield?
Right.
Can I find a map of the Booth Pond hiking? Can I find an explanation of how the trail runs? Is it steep? Is it easy? Is it going to take me 5 hours? Do I need to bring water? We don't find any of that.
Well, it means
tell
it's making
ourselves short.
it harder for people to use these parts of our town,
Right.
right? And so then if they're not using the trails, then that's going to signal that, oh, this isn't worth maintaining. And it's not necessarily that people don't want to, it's that we've got this unfortunate self-reinforcing cycle going on.
Mm-hmm. Even if it had, say, a list of where can I volunteer?
Right.
So there's tons of things we can do that would cost a lot of money.
Well, with that being said, do you have any, your sort of closing thoughts or your kind of final pitch to the voters that are tuning in?
Well, I hope we carefully consider all the candidates and look at what it is they want to do. I think it's important for you to consider candidates that reflect what you want. You consider a slate of candidates that will work towards what you want. I think the dynamic of the town council is going to be dependent on getting at least 3 people who have agendas that mesh and work together. When you only have 1 or possibly 2, they don't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the force, the weight, the ability to address anything. So whatever it is you want, I think you should consider that. I think you should think about where you want to serve in general, where you want to, you see our direction going, where you want to weigh in, how you'd like to communicate. I think you should communicate with all the candidates and ask them or tell them what you want. It's a process.
Yeah. Well, and that's so, segueing in as we wrap up our, over at public comment, we have a couple things that we're sort of trying to do to help get people in front of voters, candidates in front of voters. So number 1 is we have campaign bingo going on. So far, we've had 80 people download a card. So competition is heating up. And you are entitled, I don't know if you've gotten your sticker yet, but as a candidate, we are giving the stickers to anyone running. But if, some of the things that we intentionally put on the bingo things are things that people have control over, right? So talking to a candidate, opening the door when somebody's canvassing, voting, right? Those things to get a square, and the first 50 people to get a bingo get a North Smithfield sticker. We also have secured a moderator for a public forum to bring all the candidates together. We're working on a second moderator, Sarah. I don't know what we're doing with that. That was Sarah's job, but so more to come then. And then we do have like kind of a secret thing we're cooking up that I think we're very close to being able to announce that we're really excited about. It's going to be fun. So, and where can voters find you if they have questions, if they want to learn more about your ideas or your platform? How can they get in touch?
Well, I'm pretty open with my email and my phone because I'm always recruiting volunteers for the community garden. So you can always reach me at my email, which is JS Lilley, Lilley, @yahoo.com. And I would suggest using that because I don't know if you'll always get through on my phone. But if you get through on my email, I'll be glad to give you my phone number.
Yeah. It also sounds like they can go harvest some crops with you at the community garden.
Absolutely.
Get some work done while you guys chat.
We always need a few volunteers in August and the end of July because we get so much to pick. And we meet on Tuesdays and Saturdays. Tuesday evenings and Saturday mornings. And you can email me and I'll give you the time.
Okay. Sarah, do you want to tell everybody where they can find us?
Absolutely. They can find us on our Facebook page or Facebook group. Both are Public Comment North Smithfield. We are always happy to have conversations with fellow residents in our Facebook group, and you can always keep in touch with what we're up to on our Facebook page. Otherwise, you can check out our website at nspubliccomment.com and listen to this podcast wherever you usually get your podcasts. Spotify, Apple, all over the place, YouTube, we are everywhere. And yeah, also feel free, subscribe, drop us a review. We love hearing some feedback.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
See ya.